Okay, class, we are going to take this from the very beginning, as if no programs were open. We just opened up our computer. We are going to start in Adobe Bridge, and then we're going to open those photographs that we took in Camera Raw, and then we are going to open them into Photoshop. Okay, so on a PC, down under Start, come up and we want to search. If you're on a Mac, you're going to have to go to Finder and search for them. And you can just search for Adobe Bridge and it will pop up. Just click on it and go ahead and wait. Usually takes a little bit for it to open up. And when it first opens up, you're going to notice if it looks like mine, that's great. You got different panels that we're going to be covering here. If folders isn't seen, or if you don't have this one, or if you don't have preview over here, you can always go up to the top here where it says window, click on that, and then go down and you can click on any of these that you see, like preview. If preview wasn't open, if there was no check mark here, go ahead and click it and make sure that there is a check mark there. Okay. Same with filter. We want filter open as well. Now, Adobe Bridge is a file handling program that it handles every file that's on your computer. Okay. So right now, I've up here on the left, I got my desktop clipped, and it shows everything that's on my desktop. If I was to scroll down, it would have everything. If you click this PC, that's my actual computer, just starting on the very foundation of what my computer holds. So this PC, my computer, it has my C drive. Right here it says C drive. That is the hard drive on my computer. It has my video. I have an external hard drive that is called my video. That's plugged in. And then I've also got an external hard drive plugged in where I keep my photographs. Okay. You're going to notice that the preview over here, anything that you click in here, it's going to show up over here as a preview. Okay. So hopefully from your camera, you've opened up and you've taken the SD card out where you've stored your photographs. You've plugged that either directly into your computer or a card reader. So wherever those are, if you haven't transferred them over to your computer yet, that's totally fine. I'm going to show you how to do that in a second. But right now, we want to go and find wherever those photographs are. So I'm going to go into my external hard drive because I know there's some photographs in here. And I have a folder in here called Photos. So I'm going to double click that. And I'm going to go down. I could go to any one of these folders. I think I'm going to go down to an old photo shoot that I did a while back. In here, it's Fashion Women, and I'm going to go into Lana. And this is my friend Mitchell. He helped me out with the shoot. You'll notice if I was to click one of these images, it will preview over here. You'll also notice that this file, this photograph that I took, has a file name associated with it. Okay, you might have something similar, maybe slightly different. If you're shooting with a Nikon, .nef means this is the raw file format. Okay, raw again means a file format that does not add any contrast or saturation, but it preserves the best detail of your images. Okay. Again, this shows the history of everything that your computer as the sequential order of where we went. So we opened up my external hard drive, and then we went into Photos, and then we came down to another where I store everything, and then down below we went into my folder Fashion Women, and then we went into the folder Lana. And up here you can see also where you are, okay, the order that you took to get here. We're going to get into filters in a little bit. I'll talk about those in just a second. But you'll notice when I click on an image, down below there are some stars. Okay, right now this is starred 1. Okay, there's only 1 star. That means I've given this image a 1 star. What you can do right now is go through all of your photographs that you have, and anything that is in focus or sharp or that you absolutely love, just give them all a 1 star. Anything that does not get a 1 star, go ahead and delete. Okay. You're going to notice that everything that I 1 star, it's going to show up here under the filter. So right now, inside the folder Lana, there are 52 images that have received a 1 star rating. Okay. If I was to go back and like go through and pick one, and then 2 star, all you have to do is come and click the 2 star. You'll notice that under the filter, that 2 star just showed up. Okay. Now, if I only wanted to view the 2 stars, all I have to do is come to this box and check it. And now only the 2 star rating images will appear. Okay. So what I want you to do, go ahead and take the time. You can pause this video. Go ahead and just give all of your images a 1 star rating. And then once you finish that, come back to this video. Okay, now that you're back, you've given everything a 1 star rating. And you have, let's say you've got 52 images, or however many you have. Just go ahead and click the 1 stars. We only want to see 1 star ratings, okay? Also, if you're inside of a folder that has other documents or other images, those might show up over here as well. Go ahead and just click the camera raw images. You only want to view the camera raw images for now, okay? Once again, every time I click on a photograph, it's going to show the preview over here. If you were to click and then control click, you can have 2 images open at the same time, so you can view a side-by-side comparison. This helps a lot when you're trying to make a decision as to which one is going to be better than the other that you want to give a higher hierarchy for, especially when it comes down to choosing your final image that you're going to edit and turn in for this assignment. You can click more. If you can control click, you can add 3 images if you want to. I don't suggest adding more than that, because then the images just become as small as over here, and there's really no point in continuing to do that. At the bottom panel, below that is the metadata. The metadata shows all of the information for that particular photograph. So this one says that I was at f2.5. My shutter speed was 1/160th. I know that this is matrix meeting. My ISO is 100. It shows the file size. It shows a lot of other stuff. You could go down and you can scroll through all of this. You could input your personal information here. You could enter a website that you wanted associated with it. Down the road, if you ever become a professional photographer, you can include all of your metadata in this, even a copyright information, so that one day down the road, if you want to, for legal reasons, you can have all of that information already filled out. But for now, we're just going to go through our photographs. We've given them all a 1 star, or we've given the ones that are sharp and focus a 1 star. I should note that when you click on an image and you want to know, especially portraits, fashion, headshots, things like that involving people or dogs, cats, animals, you want the focus to be dead nuts on the eyes, all right? So when you click on an image, you come over here, you'll notice that my mouse pointer has changed to a plus sign. If you were to click on the eye, it will zoom into that area. You have to give it a couple of seconds before it finally adjusts. But you'll notice that the very tip of this magnifying glass, this very pointer, that's where you're going to be seeing. You could click and drag this over, drag it anywhere you want, but for the most part, I want to know if my eyes are in focus. And this one is. I'm super zoomed in, but it's a pretty good photograph. You can go through all of your photographs and do that. Make sure that they're really as close to being in focus as you can. That one's not actually that great of focus. Probably missed. I might have been focusing on her nose or somewhere. But it was close enough. That's why I gave it a 1-star rating. So from here, this is where editing becomes, or choosing your images becomes a little bit more difficult. Because you have however many photographs. Let's say you've got, right now I've got 48. If this was a professional photo shoot, I would narrow it down to probably 10, and I would hand those 10 images off to the client, or the director, whoever was in charge of this photo shoot that one day. For this assignment, for my class, you have to narrow this down to one image. One image that you are going to edit in Photoshop and make it look as close as you can to that image that you chose to recreate, okay? What I suggest, if you hover your mouse in between, you can make these panels larger or smaller. Make it big enough so that there's just two. And then come through, and you're gonna go through 2x2 images, okay? You can either do it this way, or you can just do it manually. Do it one at a time and decide if you want to give it a 2-star rating or not. Also, you don't have to just click through them with the mouse like this on your keyboard. On your keyboard, if you hit the arrow keys, you can just cycle through. You click the right arrow, and go through them. And then with your left hand, you can hit Control 2 or Control, to give it a higher star rating. Like if I wanted to give this a rating, I could just give it Control 2. Now, when I just gave that image a rating of 2, you notice it disappeared. That's because over here, we only have the 1 stars visible. If I was to click this box, that image, that 2-star image, will now appear. But right now, we don't want to look at the 2-star images. We know that the 2-star images are there. They're just not visible. Does that make sense? So just make sure that if you do that, don't freak out, okay? Your image is there. So go ahead, go through. You can pause this video, go through your images, and give all of your favorite ones. If you have, you should get down to half of your images. If you've got 50, only 25 of them should get a 2-star. 25 to 30, okay, should get a 2-star rating. So go ahead, pause this video, go through your images, and give them all a 2-star rating. Okay, so now that you're back, you've gone through your images and you've given a bunch of 2-star, go ahead and click, if it hasn't already been clicked, check your 2-star rating box. Now, we don't want to see any of the 1 stars, okay? So we're going to uncheck that box. So now we only see the 2-star images, okay? So once again, we're going to go through these and we're going to give a 3-star rating to our absolute favorites, okay? From 14 images, you should get down to about 7, 8, 9, okay? Just go through them. Once again, pause this video. If you need a refresher, always know that you can make this, if you hover, you can click and drag this to make that image larger or smaller so you can get a better view of it. And again, use that magnifying tool on the eye. If you're not sharp or in focus, your image should not even be a 2-star rating, okay? So go ahead, pause the video, go through your images. I suggest clicking and then shift or control clicking and lining up the 2 images and just making a decision. This is where it really becomes difficult. So for me, if I was to do this, I have a lot of these poses of her. I like the more playful pose on the right hand side. So between these two, I would come back and I would click this second one and I would hit Control 3. And that just gave it a 3-star. It just disappeared because I gave it a 3-star rating. Remember, it hasn't disappeared. It's just not visible yet, okay? So that's what I would do. I would just go through all of my images and just side by side comparison, see which ones you like. I think I like that one. I'm going to come back, Control 3, give that a 3-star rating. Go ahead, pause this video, go ahead and give out all your 3-star ratings and then come back. Now that you're back, you've got you should have just 3-star images visible. Okay, make sure that nothing else is visible, just your 3 stars. For me, I got down to 9 images, which means I'm going to have to make some difficult decisions going from 3 to 4 stars. Eventually, for this assignment, we want one of these images to be a 5-star rating, okay? So that's what we're trying to do. So I'm just going to go ahead and go through. You can pause and come back if you want, but I'm going to go ahead and just show you what I'm going to do. And you can watch and understand why I'm about to make some decisions that I'm going to make. What I like to do when I get down to like 9 images or so and it's time to make some tough decisions, we're going to click and then we're going to Control or Shift click 2 images. And we're going to side by side them again. You're going to notice that over here in the main panel here, there are a couple of images that have similar looks. Like these two below here, they have very similar looks. Both images, she's facing to the right, and there's just some subtle differences in her pose. So I have to make a decision between if I like this pose or this one. For personal usage, I would give her this image just to have. But for a professional photo shoot, somebody that wanted to use this for advertisement or modeling, I think that they would go with this one. I might be completely wrong, it doesn't matter, but for this I would have to make a decision between these 2 images. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to choose this one out of these 2. So I'm going to come back, I'm going to click that one, and I'm going to click Control 4, and I give that a 4. Just disappeared, don't worry, once again, it's not gone, it's just invisible, okay? If I was to click that, it would show back up. Right now, I just want the 3 stars. So we're going to go through and we're going to look at these over here on the left hand side, and we're going to see which ones have a very similar look. Like this one, they're kind of close-ups, you know, they're really close up and filling the whole frame right here. There's nothing in the background. One, she's looking that way, one, she's looking that way. I like the lighting on her face in this one a lot better than this one over here. So I'd come back and I would choose this one, okay? This one on the right hand side, for editing purposes, I think I'm going to choose this one though, just so that when we get into Photoshop I can show you guys skin retouching type of stuff. So I'm going to come back over here and let's say that I actually did like this one better. I'm going to click that one. Actually, I'm going to give both of them a 4 because I want to use that one for the eyes and I want to use this one for the skin texture. So I'm going to make both of these a 4. So I'm going to Control, you can have 2 images when you do this, okay? Control 4, I gave both of them a 4-star rating. And I'm just going to go through, I've got 3 images, she's dressed in black here. I think I'm going to do all 3 of these side by side and just kind of take a look at them. I've got that one that I already had that with that look. This one, I don't like this. I could remove that in Photoshop, but it's a little tight. I don't like being cropped in this much and not having room to pull out. This I can totally crop in if I wanted to. So I'm going to take this image. I'm just going to come and make sure that she is in focus on that eye, and it looks pretty good from that far away. So I'm going to come back here to this image, and I'm going to 4-star that rating, that image. That's more of a headshot, like a commercial headshot. If she needed a headshot for acting, or if she was doing some modeling, I could use that one. Or both of these actually would be really nice. So let's say between the 2 of these, I had to make a decision. I think I like her hair in this one for professional reasons. A hair artist would come in and always like, you know, why is her hair like that? I can always do that later. So it's better for models to have their hair in for headshots. Okay, this is just headshots for acting or modeling. You don't want people's hairs to be all funky and crazy for just the very basic headshot or portrait image. You want it so that when a producer looks at them, they can get a feel for the potential that this model might have. Okay, so coming back, I'm going to choose this one on the right hand side. We're going to come here, I'm going to click that, and we're Control 4, that one, 4-star rating. That's all of the 4 stars. I did not do very well. In fact, if I click my 4-star ratings and I uncheck my 3s, you'll notice I have 5 images. For you guys, you're going to have to choose one of those images to give a 5-star rating to. For me, and the purposes of this video, I want to show you guys skin retouching. I am going to choose this one, and I'm going to show you how to touch up the eyes. And then it was this one that I was going to do skin texture. Okay, so I'm going to choose this one and this one, and I'm going to give them a 5-star rating. I'm going to click my 2 5 stars, and then I'm going to uncheck those. So now I've got my 2 images. These 2 images I want to bring into Adobe Photoshop to edit. Okay, so we can either right click and just click open. We can come up and file open. We can open with and choose Adobe Photoshop. However you want to do it, just remember there are multiple ways to do the same thing. If these images are raw, and they should be raw, if you're on a Canon, they're CR5 or CR2, whatever they say. I don't know what Sony's or Panasonic's, but Nikon raw file format is NEF. If they are raw files, if you click open, they will automatically open in camera raw. If, for whatever reason, these images say JPEG, and you double click them, they will open directly into Photoshop. Okay, just so that you know why your image isn't opening in camera raw. If they are JPEGs, go ahead and click open in camera raw. Okay, so we're going to open these 2 images in camera raw. Photoshop will pop up, but there is a precursor. We have to go into camera raw first. So now that we're in camera raw, down on the bottom you're going to notice your images that you just brought in, or your 1 image, hopefully. If you have 2, that's fine, but you can only submit 1 for the assignment. This is a little strip down here, and you can click on both. You could Control or Command A and have both of them selected. This is just a little film strip to show you what's going on. It shows you their rating. It shows you the size, 16-bit. Up at the top right-hand side, this area is called a histogram, and this basically tells you the RGB values. It shows you the blacks, or the shadows. On the far right-hand side, it shows you the whites, or the highlights. Okay. Just below that, you're going to notice your settings again. This was shot at ISO 80, 85 millimeter, f8, 1/200 of a second. Just below that, under Edit, there are some things you can click. Do not click those. If you accidentally clicked one of those, come to this More Image setting, 3-dot icon, click that, and then go down and do Restore Default, or Reset to Default. I haven't done anything to this image, that's why this is grayed out. Just below that, you're going to hit Profile. Keep it on Adobe Color. If it's not on Adobe Color, if it's on something else, go back, put it on Adobe Color. Below that, it might say Light, it might say Basic, it might say Corrections, something like that. Click that drop down button. Then you're going to notice some sliders. These are all sliders, and they're value sliders for what is listed here, for exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks. Okay. If you, on the exposure right here, let's say your image is really underexposed, you could bump the exposure up of your image. Okay. And it will bring the exposure up. Notice what happens to the histogram whenever you do that. Whenever it goes into the red, it says highlight clipping warning, okay? Whenever it hits the red up there. If you were to go in the opposite direction, you'll notice what happens to the histogram. Things start to shift to the left, okay? And then a shadow clipping warning, because we went too far. Typically, if you took a good exposure, there's no need to mess with this exposure, but feel free just to, if you want to bump it up just before that clipping, you'll be okay. Contrast, it will add contrast to the image. If I was to raise the contrast between the highlights and the shadows, okay, it creates a greater dynamic range between the darks and the lights. Likewise, going the opposite direction, it decreases the contrast. You have to find a happy medium. For the most part, when you're doing headshots or portraits, you don't want this too high because you just totally ruined somebody's face, okay? So you could just keep it there, and in Photoshop, when we get to Photoshop, we can go ahead and mess around with the contrast. Highlights, these are just some very basic edits that you want if you want to decrease the highlights a little bit, if you want to bring the highlights up for whatever reason. Shadows, this is going to affect anywhere there's shadows. If you were to bring the shadows up, like we're going to start to see detail in this area right here once we bring those shadows up. Okay, you see what happened? I don't suggest bringing the shadows all the way up. I bring the shadows down just until you can't see any detail in the shadows, and then bring it back up just a little bit. Your whites have to do with anything that is on the verge of being white, or that there's white pixels in here, okay? So if you were to increase, it's similar to the highlights. If you were to increase the whites or decrease the whites, take the whites all the way out. What I like to do is when I mouse click the whites and hold it down, and then on your keyboard click the Alt key, that blacks out the image, and then slowly increase the whites until you can just start to see barely any dots come through, and then let go. That ended at +5 for me. That's perfect. The same with the blacks. The blacks, we go the opposite direction. We click the blacks, and then on our keyboard we hit Alt, and then we go to the left, and then right when we start to see some a little bit of color like that come in right around there, I let go, and that's good for me. If you don't want to do any of that, don't worry about it. Just come back, reset to default, okay? We can do all of that in Photoshop as well. It's just if you like using sliders, you can do all of that right here, and it's fast and easy. Color. This has to do with white balance. Every time you take a photograph with light coming in. Light has color to it, okay? This is where you're going to come in, and if you shot on a cloudy day, or if you shot on a daylight, pure, sunny, if you were shooting inside with either tungsten or fluorescent lights, typically you can leave it as shot, and you should be relatively close. If your eyes are good enough to tell the difference, you can mess around with the temperature and the tint. The temperature will either add yellow to the image, or it will add blue to the image. The tint slider will either add magenta to the image, or it will add green to the image. Okay? These are only to be used because you're trying to get your white balance back to like a normal daylight looking, or not daylight, but just a normal color temperature. Whatever color that her hair is, or your individual's eyes, or their skin tones, okay? You don't want this image to look crazy and unnatural, okay? To get these sliders back to their original, you can do that, or you can double click them. Double click and double click. Okay? Vibrance is just the intensity of the color, and saturation is the amount, okay? The amount of the color and the intensity of that color. Kind of like ISO almost, but I don't mess with saturation a little bit. We can do this in Photoshop. We can make your image in black and white in Photoshop, okay? Effects, I don't mess with effects a lot. This is typically done for landscape photographers. You want to add texture to your images, or you could boost the clarity in your image. When you're dealing with portraits and headshots, you'll notice what just happened to her skin tone, okay? It looks terrible. You could detexture, but we're going to do that in Photoshop as well in the advanced video that I'm going to show you. When we get to frequency separation, I'm going to show you how to do really beautiful stuff on her face. Again, landscape photographers, feel free, texture, clarity, find out what dehaze is. I don't mess with it at all. That's effects. Curve, we're not going to mess with curve. No color mixer, no color grading. Detail, if you're shooting night and you want to, if you have a lot of noise, you can come in and change your noise, come back in there. But right now I want to go down to optics. Okay. Under optics, just leave profile clicked, and then we want to make sure that remove chromatic aberrations is checked and use profile corrections is checked. You'll notice that the image just kind of distorted a little bit. That means it's trying to flatten out the plane of that the image was taken on, because our lenses, every one of our lenses has a curvature to it, and what Camera Raw does, it tries to correct for that curvature of the lens. Okay. Also, under Use Profile Corrections, it will tell you what lens you used. It will the make and the model and the profile. Okay, so make sure those two things are checked. After this, we're pretty much done. We didn't do this other image. You can go ahead and go into that other image and make any corrections that you want if you have two images. But remember, for the final, you can only turn one in. To open both of these, just Command or Control A. That selects both of them. Come in and click Open. This will open both of those images in Photoshop. Now, yes, Photoshop is a little overwhelming if you think that you have to know everything about Photoshop, but you do not need to know everything about Photoshop, okay? From the beginning, top left, you'll see the PS symbol that lets you know you're in Photoshop. Up at the top, you've got File, Edit, Image, Layer, Type, Select, Filter, 3D. We're not going to use half of those. We're only going to probably use 3 of them. Below that, you're going to notice the 2 images, or the image that you just brought in. Also, I want you to notice that the name, whatever file name that it is, .nef, that means that this image is still a raw photograph, still in its raw format, okay? The very first thing I do when I bring an image into Photoshop is I save it. Now you can come up and hit File, Save, but when we're working in Photoshop, I want us all to get used to working with shortcut keys. It will speed up your editing a lot. So you can hit Save if you want to, or the shortcut is Control S, okay? So we're just going to Control S this image, and we're going to get a dialog box that pops up, a window, and it's going to ask us where we want to save this image. Go into wherever you save it. Mine is on my external hard drive, under my photos, under my fashion. It's in the same exact folder. Make sure you save things in the same exact folder. You can, when you get here, you can click New. You can click a new folder, and you can make this folder say Raw. You can click another folder, make a new folder, and have this one say PS or Photoshop, PSD, really. That's just short for Photoshop files. You can create a new folder, because at the end we're going to save these as JPEGs. Create a JPEG folder. This we want to save as a Photoshop folder, so we're going to double click, go inside of this. We're going to come down and we're going to rename this, and we're going to rename it. I was going to name it Lana Look 1. You don't have to write PSD at the end, because if you hit enter, it will automatically save it as that Photoshop file. I'm going to come up to this other one, same thing, Control S, Command or Control S, depending. I'm going to go into my Photoshop folder. I am going to notice Save As Type. If you click this drop down, you've got different ways you can save it. Always make sure that for this, we're saving as a Photoshop. We're going to double click this, and let's say I was turning in this image for this assignment, just like what you guys are going to do. I would name this Washburn _ Psy _ Portrait _01. Enter. Okay? That's what I would do. Now, this image, I'm going to work on the eyes, and this image was going to be skin retouching. We're going to get into that in a little bit. But for this video, I want to go over the very basics of the toolbars of Photoshop. I want to go over what's over on this hand side and what happens across this top area depending on which tool we select, okay? So that video is coming up right after this. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into Photoshop. You're going to notice that over on the left hand side there's a bunch of icons. Once again, don't feel overwhelmed. We do not need to know all of those icons, okay? For the skin retouching, or whenever you're retouching somebody's face, the move tool, let me just tell you, the move tool is a good one to know, and always remember that the shortcut key is V for it. And anytime you hover over any of these tools over here, it's going to have a pop out, and it will tell you what it is. The quick selection tool, the shortcut for that is W, and you could even click play and watch a short tutorial on what the quick selection tool does, okay? For skin retouching, we're going to come down and we're going to use the remove tool. You'll notice that each one of these tools at the very bottom right, except for the frame tool, the bottom right, there's like a little arrow in that right corner down there. If you click and hold, there's a new pop out, and it allows you to actually, inside of this tool, there's options for that tool. Don't worry about most of those either. The only thing I want you to worry about is the remove tool. Click and hold. For skin retouching, we're going to be using the patch tool and the remove tool. That's it. You can use the spot healing brush tool. I might show you how to do that, or the healing brush tool. Those two are very similar on how they work, okay? The next tool we're going to be using a lot is the brush tool. This one right here. Not the pencil, not anything else, just the brush tool. Shortcut is B. After that, the only thing we're going to be using is the zoom and the hand. Shortcut is spacebar, and for the zoom tool, if you come out here and press Z, you'll notice that the cursor just turned to that magnifying glass, the little plus sign. Up at the top, make sure scrubby zoom is checked so that when you click, you can scrub to the right, or if you click, scrub to the left, and you'll zoom in or out depending on which way your mouse cursor goes, okay? Coming back to the left-hand side, if you were to click the move tool, up here, all these things, options have changed. Don't worry too much. I will let you know when you need to worry about what you need to focus on up here, depending on which tool we choose, okay? Down here, when we get to the remove tool, when we click the remove tool, it changed options up here. If we were to click the patch tool, you're going to notice that it's going to change in just a second. Boom, and it just did. So each one of these tools, if you click it, it has options of what you want to do with that tool you've selected. Don't worry about knowing everything that's up here. I will let you know what you need to do depending on which tool we select over here, okay? Again, just for reference, just so you know, we'll be using the move tool. We'll be using the crop tool at the very end when we want to crop our image and save it as a JPEG. We are going to be using the patch tool. We're going to be using these four tools: spot healing, remove, healing brush, and patch tool. We're going to be using the brush tool. And then after that, we're not going to use anything until we get down to the hand tool and the zoom tool. And we only use the hand and the zoom when we're doing edits over here. Remember, the shortcut for the hand tool is H. You can always play a video and watch what it does. Same with up here. Going back to the patch tool, if you click, let's see, if you hover, let's see, you can click the video and watch what these tools do. Okay, remove, come back in, click the patch tool, hover, go watch or learn more if you want. So these are the tools. This is the toolbar and options, what to do with it. Down on the bottom left, this is kind of an important area. This is your foreground color and your background color. And this has to do with your brush, depending on which brush you're going to be using. Right now, the foreground color, like I'm going to reset it to black and white, and to do that, you just click this black and white icon right there, and then it resets to a black foreground and a white background. So if you were to click your brush tool, like you're a painter, right? Brush tool, shortcut B, come out here. If you hit B, you got your little brush, little small circle. Up here, you've got options for the brush tool. If you click this drop down, where it has a little circle, you can change the size of it. You can increase the size so it's really big, okay? Make it really tiny, you can't see it. You can change the hardness, and I'm gonna demonstrate what the hardness is right now in just a second. Over here, there's opacity, there's flow. Don't worry about smoothing. I'm gonna go over those things in just a second. For the most part, when we do skin retouching, we want a soft, round brush. Okay? Don't worry about any of these other brushes. This is for people that are getting artistic or they're doing graphic design. Remember, Photoshop is a big program. A lot of graphic designers use it to do a lot of stuff. For the most part, when we're doing skin retouching, we want soft, round brush clicked. Okay, that should be a default whenever you click brush. Let me just demonstrate the brush tool. I'm going to click a new layer. Click a new layer, and I'm going to X that. I'm going to fill this. Don't worry about what I'm doing right now. I just want to demonstrate the brush tool. Okay, so I'm going to hit B for brush tool, and to make my brush larger or smaller, I could come up here and mess around with that slider, or my bracket key on my keyboard, left bracket makes it smaller, the right bracket makes it bigger. Okay, let me demonstrate hardness. Right now I'm going to set the hardness down to 0% hardness. Okay, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so we can see. Right now my brush is white and I'm painting on a black background, and I'm just going to click. The hardness has to do with the edge of the brush. So we just set the hardness to 0. That means there's no hard edge at all from where I just painted. Let me demonstrate what a 100% hardness brush looks like. So right now, hardness, we put that at 100%. I'm going to come out and click. Okay, so now you can see the difference. That is a 100% defined edge versus that soft gradient edge. When we do, go back into my brush tool up here, when we do skin retouching, typically we want it anywhere from 20 to 50%. Okay, just know that if you're anywhere in there, 35 even, anywhere around there is a good number. Okay, I just wanted to demonstrate what that means so you could see it. What I did over here to switch the foreground and the background, just hit X on your keyboard, X, okay? When you create a new layer, down in the bottom right hand corner down here, you create a new layer, and you can fill this layer in. If I was to disable these two layers, there's nothing on this layer right now. I could fill this with this background color, black, by hitting Control Delete. If I didn't want it black, if I wanted it white, I would hit X and make white as the background color, and then I would hit Control Delete, and now it's white. You can also come down to your adjustment layers on the bottom right hand side. This little icon is called an adjustment layer. If you click this, okay, if you're there, you can come up and create a solid color, and it's going to ask you. You can cycle through these colors right here and then come out and choose one of the gradients, and it will create a new layer for you. I mean a layer with a different color, and you just go through. For the purposes of our video, we're not going to be needing that. I'm just showing that for you just in case you wanted to do it. If you do something, you create a layer, you don't want it anymore, just click and you can hit delete. Or if you have a layer up here, you can click and drag into the trash can. Remember, Photoshop, there's multiple ways to do the same thing, okay? Right now, nothing is visible. If you don't have anything visible, that's because your little icons are not visible over here. If you have a padlock, a little lock symbol on this layer, okay, it means you can't work on it yet. You can't do anything to this layer, so uncheck that, make sure it's unlocked. As we go through this and you start to make edits to your image, always feel free to hit Control or Command S once in a while, and that saves it. Down here on the left-hand side, you'll see it's saving, okay? As you go through and you make edits, feel free to hit Command or Control S once in a while and save what you've done, just in case Photoshop crashes and you lose it. Back over here, this layer that I demonstrated, the brush tool, I don't want this layer, so I'm just going to click and hit delete, and it's gone. Remember, a lot of this stuff we're not going to be covering. We will be looking at properties, but that's once we get into adjustment layers. I'm going to finish this first video on Photoshop by talking about layers and adjustment layers and creating a new layer down here and layer masks. Okay. Again, if you hover, you can come up, watch a video on layer masks. I guarantee you they'll probably explain it a little bit better than I do. Feel free to watch that. It is based around layers, okay? And right now we've only got one, our image right here, and it's this whole thing right here is considered a layer. I look at layers kind of like plexiglass. If you were to take a clear piece of plexiglass and then put another piece of plexiglass on top of it, let me just demonstrate how that would work. Okay. So pretend that I don't have this bottom image here. Let's say I've got this layer right here. This is my bottom piece of plexiglass. Okay. Think of plexiglass in terms. There's nothing on this plexiglass. It's a perfectly clear piece of plexiglass. If I was to create a new layer, and I'm going to fill this layer in with white, so I'm going to hit Control Delete. Now it's white. I've just put a white piece of plexiglass on top of this clear piece of plexiglass that's below it. If I toggle the view, the visibility on it, we can now see that clear piece of plexiglass. There's nothing there. There's nothing on it. Toggle the visibility, and it's back. That's one aspect of layers. And what we can do with masks is watch this. If you want to hover over masks and watch that video, feel free to do it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, on this layer right here, I'm going to click a layer mask. Okay. What that does is what this is called is a layer mask, and it allows me to remove anything that is on this layer. So we're going to do that with our brush tool. Okay, shortcut key, B for brush. Boom. Over here, if your white is the foreground color, you're going to have to switch it. Okay, because white as a foreground color, white cannot remove white. Only black can. Okay, so black with my tool brush, I'm going to come in and I'm just going to click, and you're going to notice that I removed that part of that layer with a layer mask. It's non-destructive. Okay, you can delete this layer mask and you can click directly on this, but if you click, you're just painting on the layer itself. Okay, I'm going to Control Z, that's undo. You can also undo up here if you edit, undo or redo, whatever you want to do. And now I'm going to go back on this layer, I'm going to create the mask, and then on that mask I can come out and click, and I'm going to remove it. You can click and hold and drag your mouse and remove things how you want. So now what we're doing is we are removing that top piece of plexiglass, the white that was on that pieces, and now we're creating another clear piece of plexiglass. So now we have two pieces of clear plexiglass. Don't worry about the terminology or what I'm really doing. I'm just trying to demonstrate the functionality of these tools, of the tool brush and what they do, okay? Now, if I wanted to bring that back, there's multiple ways to do it. I could hit X, make white my foreground color. White is the opposite of black, so if I were to come in and start painting over this, I could bring that white back. Those are layers and layer masks. There's a reason why I showed you that, and it's going to be more in depth when we get into skin retouching. It's going to make more sense. That's a layer mask. You can do it on every layer. If I wanted to, let me make these two visible and I'll make this one visible. This layer right here, if I wanted to put a layer mask on it, I could. And then if I wanted to paint, nothing's going to happen because white is the foreground color and I'm trying to paint on white. So I'd have to switch these. I could either click that or I could just click the X button. Remember, hitting X switches those colors, okay? So with black as my foreground, I could come in, and if I wanted to, I could just remove anything on that. Let's say it went too far, I don't like it. You can just click the layer, click and drag it into the trash can, and it's non-destructive. We haven't damaged the original image. Makes sense? All right. I am going to go ahead and click both of these. You can click, shift click, click both, drag, delete. Down here we have adjustment layers. We're going to click and then we're going to get a pop out and we can choose lots of different adjustment layers. For this video we're not going to be choosing all of them, okay? I'm going to show you the brightness contrast, I'm going to show you the curves, and I'm going to show you the black and white. And that's pretty much it. Other than that, we're not going to be using any of those other adjustment layers. But you'll notice every time you create an adjustment layer, let's do a brightness contrast. The brightness contrast adjustment layer comes in with its own layer mask, okay? That means we can create brightness and contrast for the entire image, but we can come back and remove parts of that brightness and contrast where we don't want it, just like in that last example I showed you, okay? We can click and drag this, or we can just click delete if we don't want it. We're going to be going over this drop down in video 3, okay? Also, there's an opacity layer. Anytime you're clicked on a layer, it has opacity. Remember, like the brush tool we used, the opacity? If I was to drop the opacity of this layer down to 0, what do you think is going to happen, right? Opacity shows basically the opacity. If you want to look up the definition of opacity, you can, but it's basically how transparent your image is, okay? Or whatever you're trying to make increase or decrease the opacity, you're increasing or decreasing the transparency of it, okay? I'll put that back to 100 just so you can see, just for demonstration purposes. That's basically it, okay? If you need a refresher, go back and watch this video again, but that is going to be it for just the intro to what we're going to be using. Again, like I said, we did not use any of these other things, so don't feel overwhelmed. There's just a very few icons over here we're going to be using, and there's a very few icons over here that we're going to be using. In video 3, we're going to get into some of these things up here, but by then you'll know these other things already, okay? All right, so stick around and we'll get into video 2. We're going to start retouching. All right, so in this video we're going to do a very introductory to skin retouching. So we've got our image. We brought our image in, we've saved it. It's a Photoshop document. Okay. The very first thing we do, this layer over here, we are going to make another layer of this layer right here. And you can either click and drag into this plus sign, which is layer, and it will make a new one. Okay. Or I'm going to delete that. Or shortcut key, Controller Command J, and you just made a new copy. Okay. If you double click this layer, you double click right there, you can rename it, and we are going to rename this blemishes. Okay. This is where we're going to be using our patch tool, our spot healing brush tool, maybe the remove tool. Okay, we're going to be going through these. I'm going to demonstrate all 4 of these tools for you. When you do skin retouching, you want to zoom in. So for skin retouching, get used to pressing Z. Okay, you'll notice that, and the space bar, so that you can move your image around. You can't move it around because it's Photoshop does this weird thing that if it's within frame size, you can't move it around. So if you press Z, and I like to scrub in, down on the right hand side you'll notice the percentage that you've zoomed in. Right now I'm zoomed in 18.24%. For skin retouching, you want to zoom in to about 100%. This might be too much, depending on how far away you are when you photographed it, but you do want to zoom in quite a bit. Okay. Now, if your model has moles or beauty marks, okay, don't remove them. That's part of their face. It's part of who they are. If you remove them and send this image to a producer or a photo director or whatever, and then the model shows up not looking like the model, they're going to get upset that you gave them misinformation. Okay, we're going to be using our J tool. If you click J up here, you'll notice that the spot healing brush tool popped in. I will demonstrate that one first for you. So when we click the spot healing brush tool, up here at the top, we're going to click this drop down, and the size is going to change. The hardness, we're going to make that around 35% is fine. Doesn't have to be perfect, just somewhere around there. Okay, we are going to off click there, and then we're going to zoom in, and we're going to zoom in. Just for the sake of this video, I am going to choose this little blemish on her nose right there. Okay, I'm at 90%. I could zoom in a little bit more if I wanted to. Click the J, it goes back to our spot healing brush tool. Up at the top, we want content aware clicked, and we want sample all layers. That way it samples this layer and the bottom layer. And I'm going to make my brush a little bit larger. Right bracket key makes it larger. You don't want it too big so that it's you just want the brush just barely larger than the blemish. And all you do with this tool is you click. Now, this tool is not perfect because you'll notice what it does. It creates just a white, flat little paste surface. You can see the skin texture just disappeared. However, if you were to zoom all the way out, you can't even really see it. But we want to be perfect because we're going to turn this photograph into a producer or a director, some art director that is using this image for commercial reasons. So we want this to look perfect. So we're going to Command Z, Command or Control Z, that's an undo. Let's go back up into our remove tool. In this remove tool, we have to make this brushes bigger as well. Now you can make this big and just click, or if it's not, you can always just click and you can drag around the blemish, whatever blemish you're trying to do, and remove it that way. Okay, once again, not super perfect. There's still some discoloration that happened, so let's Control or Command Z that. Let's go in and try our healing brush tool. Healing brush tool up at the top, normal, sampled, aligned, use legacy, current and below, totally fine, just leave them there. If I was to make this brush bigger, you can't just click. This tool you cannot just click because it's asking for you to define a source to repair that part of the image. So what you have to do is you come over here to like this area or like a similar tonal area. Come over here, press the Alt key on your keyboard, and your icon's going to change. Then you click. That means you are going to use that area, and you come and you click that area. That did a really, really good job for me. I really like that. Just to demonstrate the last tool, we're going to Controller Command Z. We're going to undo that. We're going to come back, we're going to hit J, we're going to come back to our little tool over here, and we're going to go down to the Patch tool, okay? Now the Patch tool, you can't just click, you actually have to draw a line, and if you're using, you have to use a mouse. For those of you who haven't figured it out yet, get a mouse when you're editing. Trying to use a trackpad is going to be extremely difficult. But right now, I'm going to demonstrate the Patch tool, and we're going to click, and we're going to just draw a little circle around this entire blemish. And we're going to let go. And then inside, we're going to click this, and we're just going to drag it to a place that has similar texture. Not too dark, not too light. Something that's kind of in the same area with the same tonal values. And we're just going to let go. To get rid of these marching ants, hit Controller Command D. Okay? And that did a really good job as well. So from here, go ahead and pause the video. Go ahead and go into your patch or your healing brush tool. Go back and forth and see which one of those tools works best for you. Okay. Make sure that you're zoomed in probably anywhere from 85 to 150, depending on how close you were taking the photograph. And just go around. You're gonna be once you zoom in, all you're gonna do is go from the J tool. You're gonna use this tool, make a selection, hand spacebar. Okay, spacebar to move over. You're gonna find a new area. Click, remove, spacebar, click area, click that, remove that. Move it over a little bit, come down here, okay, and you're just going to go through your images. Don't remove beauty marks, remember, just blemishes. I'm going to come in here, remove that. Go ahead and pause the video and come back, and I will show you how far I've done. Okay, so hopefully you've gone through and you've removed any of those blemishes. Also, that either one of those tools, the healing brush tool, the patch tool, you could try those other tools, but for like imperfection areas, this model has like some chap happening on her lips right here. So I could go into my patch tool. It doesn't have to be a blemish or anything. It can be any type of imperfection that you don't want, and you could just go around that imperfection, click it, and then move it over and clean it up a bit. Okay, so hopefully you've gone through and you've made some changes. To see the before and after, just come and click the visibility, before, okay, and after. Before, after. Okay? That's very basic skin retouching for you right there. So now we want to, we're going to enhance the eyes a little bit. And you don't have to do this, but in the commercial world, everybody does it. And we're just going to make minor adjustments. We're not going to get crazy and do too much stuff. But the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to come down and we are going to click the new adjustment layer. And then we are going to go up and we're going to go to curves. We could do this with the brightness contrast, but I want to show you how curves works, okay? So we're going to click curves. Notice I was clicked on this layer. So anytime you create a new layer, it's going to create that layer on top. Now we've just created a curves layer. And nothing is going to show up. Normally under properties, you'd see something showed up, but that's because we're clicked on the blemishes. Come up and actually click on the curves, and then we're going to have some different options. This is the layer mask. We want to keep everything, the density at 100%, and we'll keep the feather where it's at. Come over here and click to the left, this area. Now this is called curves because typically you're going to create an S curve with it, and this is a contrast curve right here. We've increased the highlights and we've decreased the shadows. There's a preset also. There's lots of presets in here if you want to come in and you can click increase contrast and see what happens. You could do medium contrast. You could do strong contrast, whatever you want to do. For the purpose of the eyes, I suggest a strong contrast. I'm going to undo this, and I just want to show you what happens with curves. The bottom left right here, this is the shadows, okay? If you were to click on this and either go up, you're increasing the shadows or the blacks. If you were to come this way, you would make them darker. The top right hand side over here, this is the highlights. So if you were to come in this way, you'd make the highlights brighter. And if you were to drop your highlights or lower them, you'd make them darker. You'd remove them. The midtones is anywhere kind of in this middle area. So the midtones, if you were to increase the midtones that way or decrease the midtones going that way. To create kind of a nice contrast, people usually bump the highlights and they drop the shadows. And you can see the before and the after. Before, after. Now what this does though is that creates contrast over the entire image, especially her face. Now we could go in on our curves, this layer mask that we created. Remember going back to that first example where I removed the white layer mask with the brush tool? That's kind of what we're going to do here. I could come and make my brush tool better size and make sure that black is selected for white, and then I could come in and I could remove all the areas where I don't want there to be a lot of contrast. Okay, I could come in and do it that way. I'm going to undo that. Or this layer mask right here, I could invert it. I could make this layer mask black and cover everything that I just did to this image. By inverting it, hit Control or Command I. Okay, Control or Command I. You've just made the layer mask black. That means you're hiding the contrast that you just added to this image. Okay, that means you can't see it because the layer mask is black. Now with our brush tool, black cannot do anything on top of black, so we have to switch this to white. So we're going to hit X on the keyboard. Okay. Now the brush with white selected will remove any parts of the layer mask that we don't want. So we can come into the eyes. Let's come up to our brush first, and we're going to make the hardness around 40, anywhere from 40 to 45% is probably pretty good. We are going to zoom in though. We want to be really, really detailed with what we do here. Zoom in, hit B for brush. Let's make that brush a little bit smaller. Okay, even a little bit smaller if you want to. Now we're going to come in and we are going to paint or bring back in the contrast. Okay. Hitting the backslash will show you everywhere that you've marked on the mask. We're going to zoom out. We're going to come over to this eye. We're going to zoom in. Not too much though. We're going to click our brush tool, and we're going to do the same here. We're going to paint in the areas where we want contrast to come back in. Okay. We can hit the backslash and see we didn't miss any spots. Beautiful. We're going to zoom out. Now, maybe this is too much. You could come into the hair too. Let's go into the hair, and we are going to you can mess with this a little bit. You can keep the brush the same size. Let's say you just wanted to come in and bring back some of the areas of the dark areas. Okay, you can increase the brush and just do the whole thing if you wanted to. Of her hair, certain parts of her hair, or all of it if you wanted to. Now, you're looking at this and you might say, well, that's way too much. Okay, it's too much in her eyes, it's too much on her hair. So what you can do is you can come back to the opacity, right? Drop the opacity. What does it do? It makes this transparent. Drop the opacity back down to 0. So now we're back to the original image. The original image, because the opacity is at 0, it's completely transparent. So now we can start to bring the opacity back up a little bit, just in small increments. And we're bringing in that contrast just to the point where it's not too much, too little, but it's still pretty noticeable. Then you get the before and the after, before, after, and then decide if that's enough for you or not. Okay, so that's very introductory level idea behind adding contrast, especially to the eyes. Next, I'm going to show you how to enhance the eyes, the color of the eyes. Okay, so now we've demonstrated how to add contrast to the eyes. That's one thing that you can do. Another thing you can do is add sharpness. I'm going to show you how to add sharpness right now. If you still have anything over here, that's fine. Go ahead and go File, Save As, and then save it something like Retouching and save it as Sharpness. Okay, and keep the blemishes layer. You can delete everything else, even the layer that's below it. If you had a layer below the blemishes, go ahead and click it and then delete that one. Basically, all you need is the layer that is blemishes. We went in and we retouched out all the blemishes and the skin imperfections for that. So to add sharpening, what we're going to do is we're going to create another layer of this. You can click and drag onto that layer again, or if you click and hit Command J, you'll create another layer on top of that. From here, we're going to go up to the top here, and we're going to go on Filter. Okay, find Filter, and then we're going to go down to Other, which is at the very bottom. And then we're going to click High Pass. Okay. Now we're going to zoom in to this area right here. Don't worry about finding it in this area if you can't. Basically, I just want to look at this area of the eye, because this is we're going to be adding detail just to the areas and accentuate the areas that we want. What high pass, if you lower the high pass, you can't see anything. If you increase the high pass to 1,000, after this loads, it'll be way too much. So basically we want to find a happy medium with this high pass, where we can still see the detail and just the areas of the eye. Remember, we're just working with the eye, none of the skin tone or the texture, okay? So we want to increase so that inside of here we can start to see that texture, but we still want it to be kind of blurry. But we want to just start to accentuate those areas. So I think for me around 8.6 is fine. I could do 8.5. I'm going to click OK on that. Now I'm going to come up to this area where I talked about, I said I was going to get to this area next, this normal. We're going to drop this down and we're going to go down to overlay. We're going to click overlay. Now this adds it to the entire image. If I was to zoom out, this added it to the entire image. If you undo, you can see the before and the after. We only want to apply this to the eyes, right? So how do we do that? Remember, we added the mask. And I could take a brush and I could go around and I could remove the entire face, or we could invert this layer mask. Control I. We just inverted it. That means we just blocked out everything that we just did, that sharpening that we just did, okay? I've got my white as my foreground layer, which is good because we're going to remove this black. So we're going to come in, we're going to zoom into the eye, we're going to click our brush tool. Brush removes the layer mask. We're going to make our brush smaller. I'm going to go ahead and just increase this to 100. And I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. And I'm going to actually come in here. I'm going to lower my hardness to about 23%. Okay. Brush tool hardness around 20 to 30% is fine. And then just come back in. And we are going to paint back in where we want that sharpening to happen. Okay. You could do a little bit over the eyes, but if you do it, you got to lower the flow. I would go down to about 40% of the flow, and then you can come in and add some sharpening to the eyelashes. Okay, just a little bit. Before, after. Okay, remember the icon over here, the visibility icon, you can always click it and see the before and the after. That just really accentuates the color in her eye. We're going to come out, come in, we're going to do this other eye even though it's out of focus. We're just going to come in and we're going to bring in some sharpening to this eye here. I'm going to come back, I'm going to increase my flow. Okay, just bring it back in, and then to do the eyelashes, I don't want it too much on the eyelashes, so I'm going to come back to the flow, go down to about 45 is fine. And just go around and bring back some of the sharpening, okay? Don't do it on the whites. Especially, we're gonna talk about this next. If there's veins in the eye, don't accentuate this, because if you do, watch. If you bring back sharpening, you're bringing back sharpening in there, and that's terrible. So just undo that. Make sure it's not. Zoom out. Take a look at the sharpening in the eyes. Before, after. Great thing about this is, if you wanted to double this, you've got 100% sharpening right now. You can click and drag this layer into the plus and make a new one, and it just accentuates it 200%. You could click and drag it again. It accentuates it 300%. Okay. Obviously, there are levels of being too much. You know, if you do it too much, like that will look a little unrealistic, especially in the eyes. That's why I told you in the eyelashes to drop the flow down a little bit. I'm just going to delete one of those. I actually like having two of them. I could come into the opacity though, and I could drop the opacity to 50% on one of them so that it's only 150%. come back out, take a look at it, and to me that looks pretty good. Okay, so that was sharpening of the eyes. You could also, if you wanted to, come in and remove some of this white, create this layer. You could create a duplicate layer of that. You could come in with a brush, and you could let's create, this is going to be an overlay as well. We're just going to create white over all of this. And then we're going to drop the opacity. See, 0 opacity is that. I'm trying to get rid of some of those veins. Now this adds it to the entire image. So we're going to create that layer mask. We are going to Control I, come in with the brush tool. Opacity, flow, that's fine. We can change that later. Then we can come in too much, the eye is going to look fake. If you zoom out, that eye looks super fake. That's why you can always come back to the opacity and lower the opacity down. That's 0 opacity. You could bring it up just a little bit, and that just that slightest little amount. You could do the same thing with the other eye if you wanted to. Next video, we are going to go over frequency separation. We are going to move on to frequency separation. This is the second to last video. Actually, this will be the last video. At the very end of this video, I'm going to show you how to resize the image and save it for this assignment and for social media, putting it on your website, putting it up on Instagram or wherever. So right now we've saved this as something else. Go ahead and let's save it as a new name. We're going to go in, File, Save As, and we will call this Frequency Separation, then Enter. What we're going to be doing over here under Layers is we're going to be making 2 duplicate layers of this one, okay? So once again, click, and if you do Control J twice, you've just created 2 new layers. This bottom layer, we're going to double click and we're going to rename this low frequency. This top layer, we're going to double click and we're going to call this high frequency. Okay, we're going to disable the visibility of this top layer for now. We're going to come down to this bottom layer. And we're going to come up to Filter. We're going to go down to Gaussian Filter, Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And we are going to zoom into an area of texture. And here you can always move this around until something of high texture shows up. So right here for me is pretty good. But you can always just look out at your model as well, at the main image. Now if you take this to 0, you'll notice that nothing happens, okay? If you take this to 100, give it some time, and you just totally distorted your model's face. Even at 87, it's going to be too much. What a blur does for low frequency is that we are blurring the frequency on this layer. Frequency like radio waves, okay? Don't get too techie on that. Just know that that's what is happening. We're blurring out the frequency of that layer. Basically, you want this slider to go down to 0 and then slowly increase it so that over here you can still see your model's outline. You can see the contours of the face, but that the texture just after the texture goes away completely. You can still see texture. Right there, I can't see texture anymore in this box. So I go down to 12, actually, just go down just a little bit. For my image, 12 is good. For you, it might be 7 or 8. It just depends on what it is. Just remember, go to 0 and then bring this up. You can still see texture in here. Keep going up. If you still see the texture, keep going up. Even if you can barely see it, keep going up. I can still barely see it right there. Keep going up. I can still barely see it. And like I said, I was about 12.5 before I couldn't see it anymore. So I'm going to click OK. I am going to come back up to this top layer, and then we are going to make this top layer visible. We are going to come up to image, okay, up in the top image, and we're going down to apply image. We're going to apply a setting to this image. Right now, under layer, it says merged. We want to change this to the low frequency, okay? And then blending, instead of multiply, we want blending, we want subtract down here. The scale, we want it to be 2, and the offset, we want 128. There's reasons for that. I'm not going to geek out on you and go and explain all of that. It would take 10 minutes, and you probably still wouldn't understand it. But just know, scale 2, offset 128. Your blending mode, put to subtract. Channel, make sure RGB is there, and layer, low frequency is selected, and click OK. Also, for this layer, we are going to change normal. We're going to change this to linear light. Now, right now, it looks exactly like the image. Okay, it looks like there's nothing there. That's because we've combined them too. And what we're going to do is we're going to come down. If you were to uncheck this, we see the layer below that, this low frequency layer. Okay, we're going to come down to this low frequency layer, and we are going to come back over to our brush tool. You can hit it by J and then find it over there. We're going to click, come out, and go to the remove tool. And we're going to click remove tool. My brush is a little small, so sorry about that, hang on. J, remove tool. Right bracket makes it bigger, remember? Left bracket smaller, right bracket bigger. We're going to go around, and you're going to change the size of your brush depending on what you're working on. Right now I'm going to work on these little eye marks. Basically, all I have to do on this tool is to come in, make sure that sample layers is not checked, okay? If it is checked, make it unchecked. And then you can come in, and all you have to do is come in and brush that in. You have to wait a little while. This takes a little while. Okay? Come over here. I'm going to make my brush a little bit smaller. So basically, you want to go through your image, and if you see any areas that have any kind of discoloration or any kind of imperfections, feel free just to come in. This I wouldn't remove because it's the detail of her cheek. I could just come in and just remove just a little bit. There's a little bit underneath her nose right here that I could come and remove right there. Maybe around, I don't want to remove it completely because it's her lip, but I could just soften it a little bit. This model, she already has pretty darn good skin texture, so I don't need to do too much. But just so you can see the before and after of what you did, turn your high frequency on, okay, click this layer, and then hit Control or Command click in that layer, and then you can hit Control G, and you'll group those together. And then you can come and you can click the visibility icon and see the before, click it and see the after. It's just a very subtle change, okay? Very subtle changes, just to help out the skin texture and the tones a lot, okay? So this combined with, if you wanted to add a little bit of contrast, you can, or if you wanted to add sharpening to the eyes, you can do that. Other than that, I just suggest going around your image, and if you see any hairs that are out of place, I wouldn't remove this, but just as a demonstration, like let's say you have a piece of hair that's cutting across your model's face. If it's up here kind of out of the way, it's fine. But if there's a piece of hair coming across somebody's face that's down in this area, you have to remove it. So what you do is, to remove that, come and create at the very top of everything, create a new layer. Okay, create a new layer. We're going to click our shortcut key J for this, okay? And we are going to use our healing brush tool. We're going to make this a lot smaller. We're going to make it just above the width of the hair. You can actually make the hardness, around 50 to 60% is fine. Okay, and then we're going to sample. We're going to go across this entire hairline. I'm just, as a demonstration, I'm going to show you what happens. Under J, when you click your tool, up here at the top, make sure that all layers is select, not just current and below, because current and below, it's this current layer and then below, which is our frequency separation layers. So we want all layers checked right there. Okay, healing brush tool, we are going to come in and we're going to Alt click right on your keyboard, click Alt and then sample on a piece of texture that's right next to the hair, and then move over and then start just clicking around this whole, and you'll see the plus icon. See that little plus? That is sampling. The sampling is moving with you as you move, okay? If you came around and you notice it's starting to sample on what was already there, we would have to go and just move the sample location. You know, you're sampling off peach fuzz now, which is fine. And then we just remove that piece of hair, okay? I wouldn't have removed it because it was so tiny you couldn't see it, but maybe I would come in and remove that one with that method. You can do that if you want. Just go around your image. If there's any fuzz or lint on your image, remove that. There was a small piece of hair right here. See that right there? If you have small lint, you can click J for that one, and spot healing brush, you can use that one. Make sure that sample all layers is checked, and then for this one, make it really small, and then you can just kind of click over that little piece of fuzz or whatever it is, and then remove it that way. Okay. All right, so I've shown you a lot of stuff. Hopefully it wasn't too overwhelming. Feel free to go back, watch those videos. And again, these videos, there's lots of people doing demonstrations online if you want to go and watch other people do these tutorials. To save this image for your website or social media, or to turn in this image for your assignment, we're going to resize it, and we're going to rename. We're going to give it a different file name and file type. Right now it's a Photoshop document right up here, PSD. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to resize. Actually, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to save this. Always continue to save your images as you go through them. We made multiple copies of the same image just for the demonstration purposes of this video. I do not suggest doing multiples, because even though we've edited this version, remember the original raw file in Bridge, it's right here. This original raw file right here, .nef, it is saved in its original raw format. Okay, so even if this image is completely destroyed and you lose it and you can't find it, or for whatever reason it's destroyed, you still have the original raw file that you can go in, double click, open it, and worst case scenario, just go through the whole process again. Okay, now for this assignment, again, and social media, we're going to go to image, up here at the top, image. We're going to go to image size. Okay, make sure that pixels is checked. If it says inches, just change it to pixels. The longest, we're going to change the longest side to 1200, whatever your longest side is. If you're shooting portrait mode, then your height will be your longest side. Make sure that the links, the aspect ratio, this link chain looking thing, that is clicked. If it's unclicked and it looks like this, go ahead and just click it so that these are constrained with each other. Meaning if you make a change to this, like if I was to type 200, see how it changed the width to 800. Keep your resolution at 300, keep that there, resample, automatic, totally fine, hit OK. This is going to make a very small image. Do not save it, because if you save it right now, if you save it after it changes size, if you save it right now, you're saving it as a Photoshop document. We do not want to save it as a Photoshop document. We want to go back under File, File, Save As. And in the same folder, we had Lana, we had JPEGs, right? Remember, we were working in our PSDs. We could go into our JPEGs, and then we can name it whatever you want. For this for future references, for professional work, you can name it whatever you want. For this assignment, like if I was going to turn this assignment in, I would title it Washburn Sci Portrait, and then I would change Save As type from a Photoshop document. I would go down to the first JPEG option I have. So now you can see it's going to be changed to a JPEG. Come over, save. Leave that. All the defaults are pretty good. Quality 12, maximum, large file. Keep all of that where it's at and just click OK. Maybe later. Close that. So right now it is a JPEG, and you'll notice I just zoomed in as a JPEG and it still preserved a lot of quality. I can't zoom all the way in like I did as a Photoshop document because it starts to pixelate. But for the purposes of social media, you're never going to see an image this large on Instagram or wherever, you know what I mean? Usually those images are really small, but there you go. It is an image. If you close this one is still a PSD document. It's still a Photoshop document. We have that JPEG saved though in that folder where we saved our JPEG. So that is there. So if you come up and you hit close here, save changes to Adobe Photoshop document, no. You do not want to save this. Why? Watch. Cancel that. Image size, we changed the image size, remember? Because we saved a new version as a JPEG. So do not save it. Just close it. If you close this and hit no, everything about the original Photoshop document will be saved except for what you just did right now, which was resizing it. Does that make sense? Okay, so we're just going to hit no. And this is the other image. I was going to use this one to enhance the eyes, but I showed you on the other one. Same type of a deal. You could just go in and add sharpening, or you could do the contrast as you want. Okay, so that's it. That's what I wanted to show you. I hope I made sense and these videos didn't take too long. I do apologize. I'm not the most expert at this. Okay. I will see you guys on Friday.